Chapter 21. New Determination.
Divine presence filled the storm-racked chamber like molten gold poured into obsidian vessels. The air itself thickened, becoming substance rather than mere atmosphere. Each breath pressed against my lungs, oxygen suddenly denser than earthly gases. Temperature fluctuations rippled through the space in waves, reality adjusting itself to accommodate power beyond natural law. The same ethereal goddess who'd brought messages to Kaelan's throne room materialized before my cage. No gradual manifestation or theatrical entrance. One moment the chamber held only storm-charged air and volcanic glass. The next she stood there as if she'd always existed in that precise location. Her flowing robes seemed to absorb lightning rather than reflect it, fabric drinking an electrical discharge that would have reduced mortal clothing to ash. The material moved with wind that existed only for her, ethereal currents that obeyed different atmospheric principles than the tempest winds howling beyond translucent barriers. Impossible beauty carried undertones of cosmic authority that made reality bend around her passage. Even through pain and exhaustion, I could perceive the way space itself adjusted to her presence. Dimensions folding to accommodate a being whose existence went beyond three-dimensional limitations. The perpetual storms paused in deference to her power. Lightning that had carved warnings into obsidian walls for millennia suddenly stilled, frozen mid-strike like insects trapped in amber. Thunder that had served as my constant jailer fell silent, replaced by absence so profound it felt like physical pressure against my eardrums.
You know the mandate about this one, don't you, Theron?
Her voice rewrote local physics with each syllable, words etching themselves into volcanic glass with surgical precision. The question wasn't inquiry, but accusation wrapped in diplomatic necessity. Theron emerged from shadow-draped alcoves where he'd been observing my suffering. His handsome features twisted into careful neutrality, an expression cultivated through centuries of navigating cosmic politics.
It is not my mandate.
The words carried weight. Acknowledgement of cosmic law while denying personal responsibility. A diplomatic dance that admitted nothing while confirming everything. The goddess circled my prison with predatory grace that made Theron's earlier pacing seem clumsy. Brilliant, glowing white eyes catalogued wounds mapping his artistry across flesh, still raw from divine steel's attention. Shallow cuts that wept blood onto stone already painted with systematic suffering. Her gaze lingered on each mark with an expression I couldn't decipher.
This is true,
she said finally, her tone carrying implications that made the chamber's air feel charged.
But it still displeases the host of heaven. Damaged goods serve poorly.
The words struck like physical blows despite their clinical delivery. Damaged goods. The phrase reducing my entire existence to components in some cosmic equations. Through the pain, I forced myself to meet her glowing white gaze. I have a name. I managed, voice emerging rough through a throat raw from screaming I didn't remember. Vera. Not damaged goods or this one, or any other label that strips away everything that makes me. Her attention focused on me with intensity that made breathing difficult. For a moment, something flickered across features too perfect to be entirely real. Not quite respect, but acknowledgement that the specimen had demonstrated unexpected spine. Then it vanished, replaced by the same distant authority.
Names are luxuries afforded to those with agency to exercise them,
she said, tone carrying finality.
You serve a function. Accept that truth and suffering becomes manageable.
The mountain shuddered before I could respond. Not earthquake, but impact. Something massive striking obsidian peaks with force that sent shockwaves through dimensions adjacent to normal space-time. The volcanic glass beneath my knees cracked in spiderweb patterns, each fracture line glowing with heat. Thunder that had raged for millennia suddenly stilled completely. The silence felt wrong. This was void where noise should exist, negative space carved from reality through application of power that treated natural phenomena as suggestions. Through translucent walls carved from frozen volcanic fury, I watched storm clouds part like curtains drawn back. But the approaching presence wasn't entertainment. This was violence incarnate, moving with purpose that would reshape Pantheon territories. The goddess smiled with satisfaction that chilled storm-charged air.
I think your message has been received in full.
Wings of light unfurled from her shoulders as she prepared for departure, divine radiance making the Tempest realm seem pallid. Each feather carried its own radiance, patterns of divine energy that moved with conscious purpose.
Handle this carefully, Stormbringer.
Her glowing white eyes held warning.
The Seraph grow weary of complications. This situation represents exactly the kind of irregular development they monitor with prejudicial attention.
She vanished in a brilliant discharge that left afterimages burned into volcanic glass and my retinas. The explosion of light should have been accompanied by thunder, but silence persisted. An absence so profound it felt like the universe itself held its breath. Theron watched her departure with expressions that flickered too quickly for my exhausted mind to catalog. Part anticipation, part calculation, entirely predatory in ways that made the centaurs on Sylvanos Prime seem like children playing at menace. When he turned toward me, his face held only triumph.
Our dear Worldbreaker arrives ahead of schedule,
He said, divine steel singing as he drew his blade. The weapon's edge hummed with frequencies that made fresh wounds throb.
Time to discover how much sentiment truly costs.
He strode from the chamber with purpose that made tempest winds seem gentle when they resumed their endless fury. His footsteps echoed through obsidian corridors that existed in spaces larger than their physical dimensions, each impact radiating confidence. Through walls carved from volcanic glass, I heard sounds of preparation. Divine powers being marshaled for confrontation. Energy discharges that would have registered as earthquakes. The screech of metal being shaped through methods that treated physics as a starting point rather than limitation. Voices raised in coordination of forces gathering for battle. Whatever trap Theron had prepared, Kaelan was walking into it. The Stormbringer had spent days extracting my suffering, documenting each wound, transmitting evidence across dimensional networks to an audience of one whose growing desperation became weakness. Darkness swallowed the storm realm as perpetual lightning finally died completely. Not gradual dimming, but sudden cessation, as if someone had flipped a switch controlling the illumination. The absence felt aggressive, void pressing against consciousness that had grown accustomed to constant electrical discharge. I slumped against the volcanic glass, wounds throbbing with each heartbeat while exhaustion claimed me. The silence felt ominous after the endless thunder, as if the mountain itself held its breath. My head drooped forward, chin touching chest, marked by fresh scars. Sleep beckoned with promises of oblivion, temporary escape from accumulated suffering. But some fragment of survival instinct refused to surrender. Movement in the shadow-draped corners penetrated the fog of exhaustion like a needle through fabric. Not Theron returning to admire his handiwork. These movements carried a different quality, the fluid grace of predators hunting. Amber eyes caught starlight filtering through crystalline barriers. The glow shouldn't have been visible in darkness this profound, but lycanthrope biology operated according to principles that treated low-light conditions as the optimal hunting environment. Massive forms unfolded from the darkness like salvation wearing fur and fangs. Not the graceful materialization of divine beings stepping between dimensions, but the practical emergence of physical bodies that had been waiting with the patience only predators truly understood. The kind that came from knowing prey eventually exhausted itself while hunters conserved energy for the optimal strike. Grimjaw led them, her scarred features holding determination. 3 subordinate pack members flanked her position with coordination. Decades of operating as a unified organism showed in their movements. Each member understood their role without requiring verbal communication.
Foolish little mouse.
She growled, but her voice carried affection beneath the gruff exterior.
Did you think the pack abandons family?
The words struck deeper than divine steel's careful artistry. Family. She'd called me family despite every interaction previously marked by barely concealed contempt and dismissive cruelty. Despite my status as an outsider imposed by Seraph mandate, rather than chosen through pack bonds forged in blood and shared survival, claws designed for rending flesh made quick work of the obsidian locks. The mechanisms should have been impervious to physical force, but lycanthrope ingenuity refined across centuries of pack survival found weak points that divine confidence had assumed were non-existent. Metal screamed as it parted under the application of inhuman strength. The sound echoed through corridors that had witnessed countless scenes of suffering, adding new testimony about what happened when determined predators focused their collective will on a single objective. Freedom flooded my limbs as circulation returned to hands bound too long in lightning chains that had left marks pulsing with faint luminescence. The sensation felt like 1,000 needles driving simultaneously into flesh, starved for proper blood flow. Pain and relief mixed into an experience beyond simple physical restoration. I tried to stand, but my legs suddenly refused cooperation. My body had reached its limits, and extended torture combined with inadequate nutrition had pushed past the thresholds where stubborn will could override physiological necessity. Grimjaw caught me before I hit the obsidian floor. Her massive arms supported my frame, which felt weightless compared to what her strength could manage.
Save your energy for running,
she commanded, her tone brooking no argument.
The mountain trembles with approaching conflict. Gods prepare for war.
Through the obsidian walls that vibrated with accumulated tension, I heard sounds that confirmed her assessment. Roars from beings whose vocal cords could reshape the local atmosphere through sonic pressure alone. The crash of divine steel meeting defensive barriers maintained through constant application of overwhelming force. Energy discharges that registered as earthquakes on instruments designed to measure geological events, rather than cosmic politics made manifest. Somewhere in the tempest-racked peaks above, Kaelan fought against a trap designed to exploit protective instincts that cosmic law viewed as weakness. Whether love could triumph over cosmic authority, whether we were all simply pieces in games played by powers beyond mortal comprehension, those questions would be answered through violence. The pack moved with practiced efficiency through corridors that shouldn't exist according to three-dimensional mapping. Decades of navigating impossible architecture showed in their movements. Each turn revealed new passages. Each intersection offered choices that would have paralyzed decision-making, but which they navigated with confidence born from experience. Behind us, I heard Theron's roar. Divine fury at discovering valuable leverage had been extracted from his carefully prepared prison. The sound rewrote local physics. Storm winds resumed their endless fury with renewed intensity.
Faster,
Grimjaw commanded. Her massive frame somehow accelerated despite the burden of carrying a wounded mortal through terrain designed to impede escape. The subordinate pack members fell into a defensive formation, their amber eyes tracking threats that existed in spaces adjacent to normal perception. The mountain shook with impacts like continental forces colliding with geological consequences. Whatever trap Theron had prepared, whatever confrontation now unfolded in the peaks above, the violence had reached an intensity that threatened the structural integrity of a realm that had witnessed millennia of tempest fury without compromising foundational stability. We burst through an obsidian portal that led to spaces between dimensions. Transitional zones where reality grew thin enough for those who knew the pathways. The pack moved with certainty through geometries that hurt to perceive directly. Their enhanced biology processed sensory input that would have driven normal humans into madness through accumulated impossibility. Freedom lay ahead, purchased through loyalty and pack bonds that proved stronger than divine politics. But behind us, gods waged war that would determine whether love could triumph over authority, whether consciousness held value beyond its utility in equations balanced through systematic processing of awareness itself. The question remained unanswered. But for now, in the darkness between dimensions where predators guided their rescued family member toward uncertain sanctuary, hope persisted. Fragile and foolish perhaps, but refusing to surrender while pack bonds held firm against forces designed to eliminate such dangerous complications from the cosmic order. All hung in balance, and the scales would tip through violence beyond mortal ability to influence, through choices made by beings whose power reshaped continents. But I was free, and that truth mattered more than cosmic politics or divine mandates, at least for these precious moments.
Chapter 22. Allies Unite.
The pack carried me through obsidian corridors that twisted through impossible spaces. Each turn revealed architecture older than mortal comprehension. My wounds throbbed with each jolting movement. Divine steel had done its careful work. The pain screamed through my nerve endings. Blood seeped through makeshift bandages the pack had applied. They had torn strips from their own clothing. The rough fabric abraded my skin, already raw from the torture. We emerged onto a plateau. Tempest winds carried the scent of ozone and approaching violence. The air felt charged with more than atmospheric electricity. Reality bent around the forces gathering for confrontation. Mountain peaks thrust toward the storm-racked sky like accusatory fingers. Their obsidian surfaces were carved with warnings in scripts that hurt to perceive. Even through my exhaustion, focusing felt like swimming through tar. Grimjaw lowered me with surprising gentleness against the volcanic rock. The stone was still warm from the realm's perpetual heat. Her massive hands withdrew slowly. Her amber eyes tracked my battered form with concern and tactical assessment.
Can you walk?
Her voice carried urgency beneath her usual gruff exterior. I tested my legs. They shook with exhaustion and divine torment. My enhanced muscles struggled to support my weight. Each attempt sent lightning through the wounds Theron had inflicted. Fresh blood welled where movement stressed the tissue still trying to knit itself together. Barely, I admitted. I hated how weak it sounded, but I couldn't deny the physical reality. The pack flowed into a defensive formation with practiced coordination. Their amber eyes tracked movement in the peripheral darkness. Shapes moved there that weren't quite elemental, weren't quite alive. They hungered for flesh with single-minded determination. Theron's realm had become a fortress preparing for siege. Its usual tempest fury had transformed into something more purposeful and infinitely more dangerous. Through volcanic glass barriers that separated the plateau from deeper caverns, I glimpsed the storm realm's transformation. Lightning no longer struck randomly. It formed geometric patterns of divine warfare. Each bolt carved precise trajectories between points. They created a three-dimensional grid over the entire mountain range. The electrical discharge served as both illumination and weapon. The mountain trembled beneath approaching power. Not an earthquake, but footfalls. Something massive moved with purpose that made the obsidian peaks seem fragile. The vibrations synchronized with my racing heartbeat. Each impact sent sympathetic resonance through my bones. A wall rose before us like captured aurora made solid and wrathful. Pure lightning given form and structure. The crackling barriers stretched from the mountain base to the storm-racked sky in a display of power that challenged divine authority itself. The construction violated every principle of physics. Through its translucent surface, I glimpsed armies gathering in formations that hurt to perceive directly. Not mortal soldiers or even divine warriors in the traditional sense. These were elemental fury, given purpose and hunger. Storm elementals. Beings of pure electrical discharge shaped into approximations of humanoid form. Their ranks swelled with each thunderclap that shook the obsidian foundations. Kaelan stood at the plateau's edge. His massive frame was silhouetted against electrical fire. The light painted everything in shades of captured starlight and terrible purpose. 7 feet of controlled violence. Divine power radiated from his armor. The armor seemed to drink the ambient light and transform it into something darker, more predatory. His double-bladed axes hung within easy reach. Those weapons had ended thousands of lives with surgical efficiency. Now they waited for fresh application. When he turned toward me, something shifted in his expression. Not the clinical assessment of a divine lord evaluating livestock. This was relief so profound, it transcended centuries of careful emotional control. Fury followed immediately. Rage at the violations inflicted on someone he'd come to value. Then determination crystallized into purpose.
Vera.
My name emerged as something between prayer and battle cry. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides. His hands found my shoulders with surprising gentleness. His scarred fingers traced patterns across my wounds. The touch assessed the damage while providing comfort through simple physical contact.
I should have protected you better,
he said. His amber eyes held mine with intensity that made breathing difficult.
Should have anticipated Theron's ambush. Should have maintained proper surveillance. Should have...
You came, I whispered. I interrupted his litany of self-recrimination. That's what matters. His scarred features held an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not quite hope, but recognition that some connections couldn't be measured.
The wall will hold against anything short of Seraph intervention,
he said. His voice carried mountain-deep calm despite the chaos gathering beyond the barriers.
Theron has sealed his realm completely. This ends here one way or another.
The implications became chillingly clear. Not a rescue followed by retreat to the sanctuary's relative safety. This was final confrontation. The arena was designed to prevent escape until one side achieved absolute victory. Whatever happened on this plateau would determine whether we survived or perished. Something golden gleamed in his palm. It caught light from the electrical discharge, fruit that pulsed with contained starlight. Its surface reflected depths of power beyond mortal comprehension. The apple's skin held patterns too complex for normal vision to follow comfortably. Fractal geometries suggested the fruit existed partially outside this dimension.
Power for a limited time,
he said. He placed the impossible apple in my trembling hands. The transfer felt ceremonial somehow.
Power to rival a god, though the duration remains uncertain based on mortal metabolism.
The fruit's weight surprised me. Not heavy exactly, but dense with possibilities. Reality shimmered around its presence like heat distortion without the temperature. Each finger contact point sent warmth radiating through my skin, marked by fresh scars. The sensation went deeper than surface contact. What is it? The question emerged as barely audible whisper, awe and terror mixed into an emotion that defied simple classification. His amber eyes held something like wonder. The expression rarely appeared on features that usually maintained careful neutrality.
The apples of Eden were thought lost when the first gods were cast out of paradise for granting awareness to beings meant for simpler existence. But I found the last seeds many centuries ago.
He paused. His scarred hand gestured toward the fruit pulsing with captured starlight in my trembling grip.
Consume it and you'll understand what we fought for in that ancient rebellion. Knowledge of divine politics, power to challenge cosmic authority.
The apple's warmth intensified, as if responding to the discussion of its nature and purpose. Through its golden surface, I glimpsed knowledge of creation older than recorded history. Visions about the first fruits that granted awareness.
They may be enough,
Kaelan continued. His tone carried the weight of centuries spent researching alternatives.
to get us all thrown out of heaven again. Or to transform heaven itself into something that doesn't require harvesting awareness to sustain divine existence.
Beyond the lightning wall, shapes moved with unnatural purpose. The elemental armies swelled like storm clouds gathering before a hurricane. Their ranks were composed of beings that had never known mortal limitation or cosmic bureaucracy's careful constraints. Wild things barely contained even by Theron's considerable will. Their hunger for violence radiated through the electrical fire in waves I could feel against my skin despite the barrier. Grimjaw approached with the pack arranged in formation behind her. 3 subordinates whose amber eyes tracked threats in spaces between dimensions. Her massive frame carried the tension of a predator preparing for uncertain confrontation.
Orders, Alpha?
The question emerged with formal precision. It contrasted sharply with her usual gruff informality. Kaelan's gaze swept across his centuries-old family. These lycanthropes who'd followed him through countless worlds and endless wars. His expression held grim weight. This was a leader recognizing that orders given now might determine whether the pack survived.
They have numbers and elemental fury,
he said finally. His voice carried authority refined across 400 years of command decisions that had reshaped continents.
We have discipline and coordination refined through centuries of collective survival. Use that advantage. Stay mobile. Strike weak points. Never commit fully until the optimal opening presents itself.
The pack's synchronized nod showed understanding. They'd operated as a unified organism long enough that complex tactics could be communicated through minimal instruction. Each member understood their role without requiring detailed explanation.
What about the little mouse?
Grimjaw's amber eyes tracked my battered form with concern and pragmatic assessment.
She can barely stand, let alone fight in a confrontation that will challenge gods.
The apple pulsed warmer against my palm, as if responding to the discussion about my utility. Through its golden surface, knowledge whispered promises about power that could transform mortal limitation.
She has the apple,
Kaelan replied. His scarred hand found mine where it clutched the impossible fruit.
and more courage than most immortals demonstrate across eons.
The lightning wall pulsed with malevolent energy. Its crackling barriers responded to something beyond the plateau's immediate vicinity. Through the translucent surface of weaponized storm, I watched the elemental armies complete their gathering. Thousands of beings composed of pure electrical discharge. Their formations created geometric patterns of ancient warfare refined across dimensions where physics operated differently. Theron's voice boomed across the storm realm. It was amplified through atmospheric manipulation that treated sound as a weapon rather than simple communication.
The Worldbreaker arrives with his mongrel pack and stolen breeding stock. How touching that sentiment proves stronger than survival instinct.
The taunt carried across the tempest winds with unnatural clarity. His words painted us as desperate fugitives rather than forces worthy of serious opposition. Psychological warfare designed to undermine confidence before physical confrontation commenced. Kaelan's response came with mountain-deep calm that somehow carried greater weight than Theron's amplified fury.
You mistake protection for weakness, Stormbringer.
The declaration hung in the storm-charged air like a challenge. It questioned fundamental assumptions governing divine existence. Around us, the pack shifted into tighter formation. Not from fear, but tactical adjustment that maximized defensive coverage while maintaining mobility for rapid response. I looked at the apple pulsing in my trembling hands. I felt its warmth radiating through my skin, marked by fresh scars. Power to rival a god, Kaelan had said. Knowledge that had sparked ancient rebellions and cosmic politics spanning millennia. All of it contained within fruit grown from research executed with botanical passion and desperate determination. The question crystallized with terrible clarity. Would consuming this impossible specimen grant power sufficient to survive the approaching storm? Or would it transform me into something that cosmic authorities would view as a threat requiring immediate elimination? But as the elemental armies began their advance beyond the lightning walls, as Theron's laughter echoed across the realm sealed against escape, as the pack arranged themselves for a final stand against overwhelming forces, the choice simplified into basic survival calculus. Power or death, knowledge or extinction, agency or reduction to renewable resource awaiting processing. I raised the apple toward my lips, split from dehydration and casual violence. I felt its surface press against skin that had known too much suffering across too few days. The fruit's warmth intensified at the contact point, as if recognizing the moment of consumption approached.
Wait.
Kaelan said. His massive hand covered mine where it held the impossible specimen. His amber eyes held depths I couldn't fathom. Not quite regret, but recognition that once certain thresholds were crossed, return to previous innocence became impossible.
Once you consume it, there's no going back. The knowledge cannot be unknown. The knowledge cannot be surrendered. You'll understand what we lost when cast from paradise, and what we gained in the losing.
Then I'll understand, I replied. I met his gaze with determination, inherited from a mother who'd worn her scars like badges of honor, earned through refusing to surrender. Because standing here powerless while you fight for our survival, that's not acceptable when alternatives exist, however dangerous they might prove. Something shifted in his expression.
Then consume it knowing you do so by choice rather than necessity.
He said, his hand withdrew.
And may whatever gods still believe in justice forgive me for giving you an option that should never have existed.
The apple's skin parted beneath my teeth. Golden juice exploded across my tongue. It carried tastes that had no earthly equivalents. Sweet and bitter simultaneously. Hot and cold in impossible combination. Familiar and alien in ratios that made classification meaningless. Knowledge flooded my consciousness like a dam breaking. Power followed immediately. Energy radiated through my body as cellular structures adjusted to accommodate forces beyond their designed limitations. My wounds began knitting faster. The exhaustion that had made standing difficult evaporated like morning fog before solar intensity. It was replaced by vitality that felt simultaneously natural and utterly alien. I rose to full height without difficulty. My legs held firm despite the accumulated trauma. The plateau stretched before me with clarity beyond normal vision. Each detail was sharp and precise in ways that suggested perception, operating beyond three-dimensional limitations. Through the lightning wall, I watched the elemental armies advance with hunger that would consume everything in their path unless opposed. Beyond them, Theron stood atop an obsidian peak with divine steel gleaming in captured starlight. His handsome features were twisted into an expression that promised violence refined across millennia, and beside me, the Worldbreaker stood with his pack arranged in defensive formation. His amber eyes tracked threats while simultaneously monitoring my transformation with concern. Whatever happened next, whatever price the apple's consumption demanded in exchange for the power and knowledge it had granted, we would face it together. The storm was coming, but perhaps finally, we were ready for it.